candidate, and then we will proceed to a vote. And what makes the vote so much fun for those of us who like to watch the House floor is that it's not done electronically, as this quorum call is being done, but it's done alphabetically. And every member is called by their last name, and then they have to say whom they are voting for. And so it takes a good 30, 45 minutes, and as you're watching, you can look for folks you think might not vote for their party's nominee, whether they choose not to vote or vote for someone else. And just as we had that, and we saw that drama in 2015, and it could conceivably happen again today.
As a political junkie, who are you watching today?
In terms of folks, how they're going to vote, well, certainly Tom Massey of Kentucky is a Republican who has said pretty clearly he's not going to vote for Mike Johnson, even though Johnson is his party's nominee. And then we have about a half dozen to a dozen other Republicans, folks like Chip Roy from Texas, who have said they're not happy with Johnson. They haven't necessarily said they'll vote against him, but they have expressed varying degrees of dissatisfaction. And so what they do in this vote, which is coming up, will help determine whether or not we have a speaker in the first ballot, or if we have to have multiple ballots.
What happens if 10 or so Republicans, again, 219 to 215 is the breakdown, 10 or so Republicans vote present?
So this is a good question, because the way a speaker is chosen, basically there's two things that you need in order to get chosen speaker. First, you have to have the most votes. But second, you have to have an absolute majority of all the votes that are cast for a named candidate. So it could be Johnson or Jeffries, or it could be anybody, but it has to be a name. So if you choose not to vote, or you vote present, it's as if you're not voting at all, and it's not counted towards the denominator. So, for instance, a lot of people are talking about how Johnson can only afford one defection, which is true. If Tom Massey votes present, doesn't vote, or votes for someone else, Johnson will still have a majority. But when you start having more defections, then how they vote will matter. So, for instance, if there are two defections, two Republicans who choose either to vote for someone else or not to vote at all, or vote present, then the outcome depends on what their vote choice is. If they, for example, those two members decide not to vote at all, they're not counted. And then the threshold that you need to get elected is not 218 as it is now, but 217. And in which case, Johnson would lose 2 votes, but he would have 217. He would have the majority, he'd still be speaker. But if those two Republicans choose to vote for another named candidate, you still need the 218. And Johnson would have 217, so we wouldn't have a speaker chosen.
So if everyone votes, 219, 215, Hakeem Jeffries does not stand a chance of being elected speaker if no Republicans vote for him, correct? If everyone votes for a name.
Yes, but right? Once you get,
What's up, guys? Looks like I just missed a car chase, huh? I see I just missed a car chase.
Because at that point, he would only
Was it good? Was it any good?
14 votes. And if every Democrat
Should we rewatch it?
Jeffries has 215, which is more than 214. So then how those folks choose to vote, if at all, matters.
Matt Green of Catholic University, we'll come back to you. Let's go to the House.
Are there additional representatives-elect in the chamber who wish to record their presence?
Hong Hong, Grammy.
Time has expired. 433 representatives-elect have recorded their presence.
Happy New Year, Jesus. First stream of the year, everybody.
Regular and form have been received showing the election of the Honorable Pablo Jose Hernandez Rivera as resident commissioner from the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico for a term of 4 years beginning January 3rd, 2025.
Flying Scoot. Oh, some teens stole a car, huh?
Eleanor
Yeah.
Holmes
Okay.
Martin as delegate from the District of Columbia.
Sounds right.
The Honorable James C. Moylan as delegate from Guam. The Honorable
Excuse me, I should
Steve
refer to all of you as
Costa
honorable. The Honorable Flying Scoot. Thank you for the comment. Honorable Rebel Yankee. Yes, a stream. A stream is happening. A day stream, too, nonetheless.
And the Honorable
Hong Hong Gotar.
Hines as delegate from the Commonwealth of the Northern Mariana.
I have no idea if this is going to be a shit show like it was that one time last year.
Matt Gates of the state of Florida, indicating that he will not serve in the House in the 119th Congress.
Yeah, what's up with that? Who's replacing Matt Gaetz?
Without objection, the letters relating to his resignation will be printed in the record.
I guess this is the order of business.
Pursuant to law and precedent, the next order of business is the election of the Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 119th.
Yeah, volume should be better. Sorry about that.
Nominations are now in order. The clerk recognizes the gentleman from Michigan.
YouTube automatically resets that volume to like 15% every time I think every time I restart my computer. I don't know why it does that.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk, and thank you, colleagues. Mr. Clerk, as the chair of the Republican Conference, I am directed by the
You're
vote
sending me in Matt Gaetz' place? Okay.
to present for election to the office
I'm sure
of
Florida
the
will
Speaker
love
of
that.
the House of Representatives for the 119th Congress. The name of the Honorable Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana. Welcome, everybody. I am optimistic about our future. On November 5th, the American people gave us a great opportunity to get America back on the right track. They gave us an opportunity to get back to normal and to get back to the real issues that the country faces right now. People want the opportunity to take care of their families. They simply want to provide for their children and give them a prosperous future. And ladies and gentlemen, we have the opportunity today to do just that. We have an opportunity to take our country back. With Speaker Mike Johnson, Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and President Donald J. Trump in charge, we have the opportunity to put America first again.
Make America great again. Yes.
We have an opportunity to do something about crime. We have an opportunity to do something about the border. And we have an opportunity to take care of our veterans. We and every single member in this chamber, and those of you watching at home and on TV, should be looking forward,
I hope Massey holds out.
knowing that
I just kind of do. I want the drama.
will be respected again.
He's
Our
going to get the
country
speakership,
is the
but I want
last
some drama.
bastion of hope. If we fail, then who? This is why we are focused
Michael,
on the
yeah.
issues that the majority
Ron Johnson
of
has
Americans
shown
care
some
about.
rhino tendencies. But
family,
maybe after the
country,
election, he'll change his
faith,
tune, you know?
freedom,
Politicians
and
only care
traditional
about how they're
American
perceived.
values.
Joe, he should just hold out for a nice sandwich, right? Yeah, make a ridiculous demand. I want a Jersey Mike's Way, and a bag of M&Ms.
To achieve the American dream. Over 14 months ago, Mike Johnson took on a daunting task. No speaker is perfect, and no one will ever be.
Why can't we get a perfect
However,
speaker?
Achieving perfection
Joe, I said no fucking pickles. I'm out.
Gains and hard decisions along the way. None of us will get exactly what we want.
Honorable Neo Dark Matter.
The
Best I can do is
fundamental
Jimmy John's.
Collective goal of this body is to make progress for the American people in
Michael,
which
I didn't
we
vote for maybe.
represent.
Yeah.
And we have done just that under Mike's leadership.
Have we? Have
We
though?
should be celebrating and building upon his efforts, our efforts. Mike has remained the same kind and caring person as he was before he assumed this role.
I don't care if he's
an honest
kind and
broker.
caring.
He shows you his
I want him to
true
not
beliefs
sell
at
out my
face
country.
value. He is steadfast in his values of faith, family, and love of this country. He knows our brightest days are still ahead of us, and I do too. I am hopeful for the next Congress. I am optimistic that we will focus on those issues that people truly
So near
care
dark,
about. I know
there is
Mike
a way
will be
Jeffries
an
becomes
integral
speaker.
part of this country's comeback.
If too many people
He will lead us through another
vote like just present
successful
instead of no,
Republican
if too many
majority.
Republicans vote
As
present instead of
chairwoman
no,
of the unified
and all of the
House
Democrats
Republican
vote
Conference,
for Jeffries,
I can
then
say
Jeffries
proudly
becomes speaker. I don't think the
that
Republicans
we
allow
are
that to
ready
happen.
to govern.
But we've watched dumber shit on the zone before, so. Satrack, I've got an Indian-owned Subway sandwich for him.
It is my honor
Yeah.
to present our conference's nominee.
Lynn, the
for
old lady in the light
Speaker
blue gray does not
of
look
the
impressed.
People's House, the Honorable
I'm not sure she
Mike
knows where she
Johnson
is.
From the state of
I was watching this earlier, and they were like, "Oh, Nancy Pelosi's actually here. She's recovered. She's recovering from her hip surgery. That because she fell and broke her hip last month somewhere overseas and had to have hip surgery in another country." And they were commenting on how she's wearing flats today. It's the first time she's ever worn flats. She always wears heels, whatever. And then they were also saying that another Democrat representative who hasn't been seen since last year when he had a stroke is here in a wheelchair. I'm just like, come,
Mr. Aguilar.
can we just have someone under the age of 80 representing us in Congress, please? And it's all, why are all the Democrats decrepit 90-year-olds?
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Clerk. I've had a little bit of practice, and clearly my colleagues took notice. I rise to place a name in nomination, but first, I want to acknowledge my colleague from Michigan for her heartfelt and personal nominating speech. As someone who's given a few of these, I can say you served your caucus, your conference well, Representative McLean. But Mr. Clerk, today I
Motherfucker, no,
rise
only lizards.
on behalf
Yeah.
of the governing majority
Yeah.
of the House of Representatives. The American people have sent a strong message that they want their elected leaders working together to tackle the affordability crisis.
Yeah, here
There's
comes
only
all the
one
Democrats
leader
in Congress.
this chamber
Oh, we all
with
need
a
to be
track
happy
record
and work
of
together
compromise,
now.
conviction,
After years of,
and compassion.
fuck you, Republicans, we ain't
There's
doing
only
shit.
one leader
We're in
who
control.
understands the needs of the working people and has lived the American dream himself and is committed to ensuring its promise for future generations. There is only one leader who knows how to negotiate a bipartisan deal and then stick to that deal. House Democrats are united.
Good
behind the
after
most
home,
powerful
Fractal Ninja.
legislative
Good to
leader in
see
this
you,
chamber,
honorable
Hakeem
member.
Jeffries of Brooklyn.
Obama light. You will never be Speaker of the House.
House Democrats, under the
Unless
leadership of
Republicans
Hakeem
royally
Jeffries, are
screw this
committed to
up,
bipartisanship
which
and common sense solutions
wouldn't
to
completely
America's
shock me.
most pressing challenges. In the face of chaos and dysfunction over the last 2 years, our caucus has kept the government funded, kept our allies protected, and
And only gave away $3 trillion to Ukraine.
In the 119th Congress, we will work with the incoming administration to make life better, safer, and more affordable for working families. And the incoming administration must also recognize that while my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are divided, and while compromise remains a dirty word for so many, Congress won't be able to keep the lights on, let alone pass anything of substance, without the buy-in and blessing of House Democrats and Hakeem Jeffries.
What?
Make no mistake, Democrats want to bring down the cost of living, build more housing,
What?
and lower the cost of everyday items like food, medicine, and childcare.
Is this the new Democrat
Even as the extreme
platform?
rhetoric rises in this chamber and in the public square, we will not stop advocating for the policies that do the most good for the most people. Because of Hakeem's leadership, we will never abandon our values or sacrifice our bedrock principles of freedom and democracy. When America's enemies abroad threatened our democratic ally, Ukraine, when terrorists attacked our strongest ally, Israel, it was Hakeem Jeffries and House Democrats who delivered the votes and stood tall for America's national security.
Valentinius, yes, they took a short break from robbing us. Do you just mean Congress
When
in
the
general?
least, the lost, and the left behind.
They took
were
like a
threatened with
month-long
devastating
break.
Cuts. Hakeem Jeffries stood with America's mothers.
But I think they
children,
continued to rob
and
us the whole
veterans.
time.
When the incoming administration wanted to raise the debt limit by trillions of dollars in order to finance tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected, leaving middle-class families to pay for the bill and leaving them high and dry. Hakeem Jeffries didn't just say no, he said, no. That's why there is only one true candidate today for Speaker. So, Mr. Clerk, I am honored to rise today at the direction of the House Democratic Caucus to place into nomination for election to the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives, the pride of Brooklyn, the gentleman from New York, Hakeem Jeffries.
And now they do the haka dance.
The names of the Honorable Mike Johnson,
Whatever it's
a
called.
representative-elect from the state of Louisiana, and the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries, a representative-elect from the state of New York, have been placed in nomination. Are there further nominations? There being no further nominations, the clerk appoints the following tellers. The gentlewoman from North Carolina, Ms. Fox. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Morelli. The gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Stile. And the gentlewoman from California, Mrs. Torres. The tellers will come forward and take their seats at the desk in front of the speaker's rostrum.
This lady's been covering Congress since before the Civil War. She knows what's going on around here. Joe, she didn't pause to hand out any Werthers, so she means business. Cabusier, hey, isn't she a police detective? Yeah, same police detective from New Orleans. She gets around. Lynn, I do believe they have to either vote for one of the nominees or abstain. Lynn, yeah, same lady that didn't look impressed behind you.
Game on. Loosen the tie.
Quick poll for each vote. Will someone get passed? You want to do a poll that will someone become speaker on the first vote? All right, poll is up over on Twitch. You can use your channel points. Do a poll over on YouTube as well. YouTube does not allow gambling on polls. Wait a minute, are the points working over on Twitch? Did I do it wrong? Oh, I needed to do a prediction,
The
not
roll
a
now
poll.
will be called.
I did it wrong.
And those responding to their
Yeah.
names will indicate by surname the nominee of their choosing.
Well, if there isn't one on this one, I'll do a prediction on the second one. Or actually, we have time to just redo it. I'll just redo it. Well, someone
Adams,
become
Jeffries,
speaker on the first vote.
Adderholt, Johnson, Aguilar, Jeffries, Alford, Johnson, Allen, Johnson, Amo, Jeffries, Amode of Nevada, Johnson, Ansari, Jeffries, Arrington, Johnson, Auchincloss,
Who?
Jeffries, Babin, Johnson, Bacon,
Corbusier, Dalla on Johnson. All right.
Baird, Johnson,
Thank you for the super chat.
Alderson, Johnson, Ballant, Jeffries, Barr, Johnson, Beragan, Jeffries,
Neo Dark Matter, yeah,
Barrett.
I've always noticed Twitch is a couple seconds ahead of the YouTube stream.
Barrett, Baumgartner,
Welcome,
Barrett.
Honorable Jay Davis.
Johnson.
I'm glad you could be here for the vote.
Barrett, Johnson, Baumgartner, Johnson, Bean of Florida, Johnson, Beatty, Jeffries,
God, they're so annoying. Just give your vote.
Johnson, Bell, Jeffries, Betts, Johnson, Barra, Jeffries, Bergman, Johnson, Byer, Jeffries, Vice. Johnson. Biggs of Arizona. Biggs of Arizona. Biggs of South Carolina.
President Trump's endorsed candidate, Mike
Johnson.
Just say the name. No clapping.
Bilirakis. Johnson. Bishop. Jeffries. Bobert.
Wow, Bobert voted Johnson.
Bonamici. Jeffries. Bost.
Catnip. A lot of them have their families here. It's the first day of the new
Royal,
Congress.
Pennsylvania.
People bring their families. It's
Jeffries.
dumb.
Rakeen. Johnson. Bresnahan. Johnson. Brown. Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan. Johnson. Budzinski.
Wait, so earlier it sounded like Andy Biggs didn't respond. So they'll come back to him, but...
Johnson. Burleson. Johnson. Bynum. Jeffries. Calvert. Johnson. Kamick. Johnson. Carbajal. Jeffries. Carey. Johnson. Carson. Carson. Carter of Georgia.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. Johnson.
Probably Valentinius.
Kassar.
Probably.
Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Shifferless McCormick. Jeffries. Chu. Jeffries. Ciscomani.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Cisneros. Jeffries. Clark of Massachusetts.
I think they need 218 to
Jeffries.
win, right? And then
Clark
that
of
changes
New York.
if someone abstains
Jeffries.
or isn't present, but...
Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Johnson. Cloud. Cloud. Clyburn. Jeffries. Clyde.
Right, Joe Discount, you can do pretty well
Clyde.
predicting how they're going to vote just by their last name.
Cohen. Jeffries. Cole. Johnson. Collins. Johnson. Comer. Johnson. Conaway. Jeffries. Connolly. Jeffries. Correa. Jeffries.
Uh-oh, Jeffries is coming on up.
Costa.
Gentleman for Brooklyn, Hakeem Jeffries.
Uh-oh, it's
Jeffries.
tied!
Courtney. Jeffries.
Jeffries wins!
Jeffries. Crane. Johnson. Crick.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Crawford.
Johnson.
Johnson. Crenshaw.
Johnson.
Johnson.
Jay Davis moving on up.
Jeffries. Crow.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Queer.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Davids of Kansas. Jeffries. Jeffries. Davidson.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Davis of Illinois. Jeffries. Davis of North Carolina. Jeffries. Dean of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. DeGette. Jeffries. De La Cruz.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. DeLauro. Jeffries. Delbene. Jeffries. Deleuze.
Yeah, so Johnson needs 218 to win, but that number changes if people either haven't, if someone isn't there, or if someone abstains.
Johnson.
So it's 218 if everyone votes.
Jeffries. Diaz-Balart. Johnson. Dingle. Jeffries. Duggett. Jeffries. Donalds. Johnson. Downing.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Dunn of Florida.
Corbusier, no traitor votes yet.
Edwards.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Alfred. Jeffries. Elsie.
Johnson.
Johnson. Emmer.
Johnson.
Johnson. Escobar. Jeffries. Espaillat.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Estes.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Evans of Colorado.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Evans of Pennsylvania.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Ezel.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Fallon.
Fourth District of Texas votes proudly for Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Fedorchak.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Feenstra.
Johnson.
Johnson. Fields.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Figures.
Apparently, Kamala Harris screwed up the Pledge of Allegiance while presiding over the Senate.
Johnson.
Johnson.
Hang on. We'll get back to that in a second.
Join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. Pledge allegiance to the United States of America. And join me in
Kamala doesn't know the fucking pledge. Of course she doesn't. Wow.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries.
So there are three people who didn't vote so far in this round. It's Biggs, Crane, and Cloud.
Lois Frankel. Jeffries.
Now what they'll do is they'll ask them again at the end of the vote.
Johnson.
But there are three people that just flat out didn't respond when asked.
Jeffries. Frost. Jeffries. Fry.
Joe, that was the Black Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, okay.
Fulcher.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Garamendi.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Garbarino.
Johnson.
Johnson.
I feel like I could be very, 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 very drunk and still not screw up the Pledge of Allegiance, but
Garcia
I don't know.
of Illinois.
Maybe she is that drunk.
Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Gill of Texas.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Gillen. Jeffries. Jimenez. Johnson. Golden of Maine. Jeffries. Goldman of New York. Jeffries. Goldman of Texas.
Just a motherfucker, let's test that.
Gomez.
Okay.
Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Johnson. Vicente Gonzalez. Jeffries. Gooden. Johnson. Goodlander. Jeffries. Gosar. Gottheimer.
Okay, now Gosar as well. The fourth one has not responded.
Graves. Johnson.
There's 4 Republicans so far that have decided to just not respond, which means they will get put at the end of the roll call. Maybe they're just waiting to see how the vote shakes out. I don't know.
Johnson. Green of Texas.
For the preferred candidate of liberty and justice for all, the hope and dream of his place. Order!
Boo!
The gentleman may respond by surname.
He called me a Teletubby.
Green of Texas. Jeffries. Green of Georgia. Johnson. Griffith. Johnson. Grijalba. Jeffries. Grothman. Johnson. Guest. Johnson. Guthrie. Johnson. Hageman. Johnson. Hamaday of Arizona. Johnson. Carter of California. Jeffries. Herodopoulos. Johnson. Harrigan. Johnson. Harris of Maryland. Harris of Maryland. Harris of North Carolina. Johnson. Harshbarger. Johnson. Hayes.
Okay, so there are now 5 holdouts. Biggs, Clyde, Cloud, Gosar, and Harris.
Hearn of Oklahoma. Johnson. Higgins of Louisiana. Johnson. Hill of Arkansas. Johnson. Himes. Jeffries. Henson. Johnson. Horsford. Jeffries. Haushin.
Onus, Republican. So the five people that just haven't responded so far are all Republicans.
Jeffries.
They're part of what Jarvis is calling the Massey watch list.
Coyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson.
I imagine Massey will also not respond.
Johnson.
And all that means is that they'll get called again at the end of the roll, but we'll see what they do.
Huizenga. Johnson. Hunt. Johnson. Hurd of Colorado. Johnson.
Valentinius, who's voting for Ukraine and Israel? Every single person in this room.
Johnson. Ivy.
It seems. Minus a few.
Jack. Johnson. Jackson of Illinois.
The Honorable Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Jackson of Texas.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Jacobs. Jeffries. James.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Jayapal. Jeffries. Jeffries.
Jeffries.
Jeffries.
Oh, God. I hope the Republicans don't clap when Johnson votes for himself.
Johnson of Georgia. Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Johnson.
Everyone congratulate me on voting for myself. I'm so important. Come on, let's get it. Let's get it go.
Johnson of South Dakota.
Right, Fractal Man votes for himself. Let's all congratulate
Johnson
him.
of Texas.
How many Johnsons are there? There are like 6 Johnsons.
Johnson. Joyce of Ohio.
Johnson.
Johnson. Joyce of Pennsylvania.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Kim Lagardelle. Jeffries. Captor.
Corbusier, I have a feeling they're going to try to hold out for a second vote.
Johnson.
Because if
Keating.
Jeffries.
Jeffries.
we'll see what the plan is at the end of
Kelly
this.
Illinois.
But they might want to have a conversation. They might want Johnson to promise them something before they vote for him.
Kelly of Mississippi.
Johnson.
Johnson. Kelly of Pennsylvania.
Johnson.
Johnson. Kennedy of New York. Jeffries. Kennedy of Utah.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Connor. Jeffries. Kiggins of Virginia. Johnson. Kylie of California. Johnson. Kim. Johnson. Nutt.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Krishnamurthy.
Jeffries.
Jeffries.
I wonder who AOC will vote for.
Kustoff. Johnson. LaHood. Johnson. Lanota.
Well, so Salomonius, so far, everyone in the Massey contingency just hasn't responded when they've asked for their vote. We'll see what Massey does, though. Maybe they're waiting to see what...
Landsman. Jeffries. Langworthy. Johnson. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latimer. Jeffries. Latta.
Johnson.
Johnson. Lawler.
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson.
Okay, Lawler.
Lee of Florida. Johnson. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ledger Fernandez.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Letlow. Johnson. Levin.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Ricardo.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Lou.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk.
Johnson.
Johnson. Lucas.
Johnson.
Johnson. Luna.
MAGA Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Latrell. Johnson. Lynch.
I'll give Luna a pass for that one.
Mace. Johnson. McKenzie.
That son of rock! Good to see you, brother.
Johnson. Magaziner.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Maliotakis. Johnson.
Massey coming up soon.
Malloy. Johnson. Mann.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Mannion.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Massey.
Tom Emmer.
Emmer.
Emmer. Wow.
Mast.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Matsui. Jeffries. McBath. Jeffries. McBride. Jeffries. McCall. Johnson. McLean.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. McLean Delaney. Jeffries. McClellan.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries.
Tom Emmer. I forget where he's from, but he's
Johnson.
from the Republican representative from Minnesota.
Jeffries.
He's the current majority whip of the House of Representatives.
McCormick.
I wonder why Massey voted for him.
Johnson.
I mean, he's
McDowell-Rivet.
doing this because he wants to have a conversation. He wants some promises from Johnson.
McDowell.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. McGarvey.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. McGovern.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. McGuire.
President Trump in the electoral vote have found the legislative Mike Johnson.
Johnson. McIver.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Meeks.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Menendez.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Mang.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Messmer.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Muser.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Mfume.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries.
Yeah, I believe Emmer
Miller
voted
of
Johnson.
Illinois. Johnson. Miller of Ohio.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Miller of West Virginia. Johnson. Miller Meeks.
The Honorable Representative and Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Mills. Johnson. Min.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Molinar. Johnson. Moore of Alabama. Johnson. Moore of North Carolina.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Moore of Utah.
Steve Johnson.
Johnson. Moore of Wisconsin.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Moore of West Virginia.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Moran.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Morelli.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Morrison. Jeffries. Moskowitz. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Mervan. Jeffries. Mullen.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Murphy.
Johnson.
Johnson. Nadler.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Neal.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Nagoose.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Nails. Johnson. Newhouse.
Mr. Johnson.
Johnson. Norcross.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Norman.
Jordan.
Jordan. None of Iowa.
The Honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson.
Wait, I missed that. Wait. Who just voted for
no,
someone?
too.
Wait, who voted for what there?
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles. Johnson.
Wait, who voted for Jordan?
Olszewski. Jeffries. Omar. Jeffries. Onder. Johnson. Owens. Johnson. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Palmer. Johnson. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pelosi.
It was Norman. Norman voted for Jim Jordan. Ralph Norman. Ralph Norman from South Carolina. Which I think means we're going to a round 2. I think we're guaranteed a round 2 now.
Perry. Johnson. Peters. Jeffries. Pedersen. Jeffries. Fluger. Johnson. Pingree. Jeffries. Pocan. Jeffries. Poe. Jeffries. Presley. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez. Jeffries. Randall. Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Johnson. Riley of New York. Jeffries. Rivas.
Yeah, no, he doesn't have the votes. He doesn't have the votes, guys. Oh boy, we could be in for a long day.
Johnson. Rogers of Kentucky.
Mel, she did break a hip. She broke her hip last month. She had hip replacement surgery. She is here today, though.
Johnson.
Notably wearing flats for the first time ever, according to the commentators earlier.
Rouser. Johnson.
There's also a Democrat who hasn't been present for any of these votes in like a year because he had a stroke, but he's there. I forget who that is.
Ruiz. Jeffries.
Can't change your vote, Sammy. In the
Johnson.
poll. Everyone who voted no
Rutherford.
is banned.
Johnson. Ryan.
Oh yeah, and I've got a
Jeffries.
managed
Salazar.
prediction. Choose outcome. Will someone become speaker? The answer is
Johnson.
no.
Salinas. Jeffries. Sanchez. Sanchez. Jeffries. Scalise. Johnson.
Congrats for the 230
Stanley.
channel points.
Jeffries. Schakowsky. Jeffries. Schmidt. Johnson. Schneider. Jeffries. Skolton. Jeffries. Schreier.
Salmonius, I think that's a
Jeffries.
state representative, not a federal congressman.
Johnson.
That was missing in the nursing
Alton
home.
Scott.
I think.
Johnson. David Scott. Jeffries. Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Donalds.
Yeah, Texas Republican representative.
Johnson.
Oh wait, actually no, that she was a federal representative. What?
Jeffries.
Wait, is she there today?
Jeffries. Cheryl.
Yeah, she's the representative for Texas 12th district.
Shreve.
I don't. When that headline came across, for some reason I thought it was just like
Johnson.
she was a Texas
Simon.
state representative, not the representative for the state. Wow, that's even crazier.
Jeffries. Simpson. Simpson. Johnson. Smith of Missouri. Johnson. Smith of Nebraska. Johnson. Smith of New Jersey. Johnson. Smith of Washington. Jeffries. Smucker. Johnson. Sorensen. Jeffries. Soto. Jeffries. Sparts. Sparts. Johnson. Stansbury. Jeffries. Stanton. Jeffries. Stauber. Johnson. Stefanik. Johnson. Style. Johnson. Stubbe. Johnson. Stevens. Jeffries. Strickland. Jeffries. Strong. Johnson. Stutzman. Johnson. Subramaniam. Jeffries. Suozzi. Jeffries. Swalwell. Jeffries. Sykes. Jeffries. Tucano. Jeffries. Taylor. Johnson.
Swalwell didn't vote for Fang Fang?
Penny.
I'm surprised.
Johnson. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Tiffany. Johnson. Timmons. Johnson. Titus. Jeffries. Talib. Jeffries. Takuda. Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Tran. Jeffries. Turner of Ohio. Johnson. Turner of Texas. Jeffries. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Johnson. Van Drew. Johnson. Van Dyne. Johnson. Van Orden.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Vargas.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Vasquez.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. VC.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Velasquez.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Vindman.
Jeffries.
Jeffries. Wagner.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Wahlberg.
Johnson.
Johnson. Waltz.
Waltz. Wasserman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters. Jeffries. Watson Coleman. Jeffries. Weber of Texas.
James Michael Johnson, Louisiana's favorite son.
Johnson.
Johnson.
Webster of Florida. Johnson. Westerman. Johnson. Whitesides. Jeffries. Weed.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Williams of Georgia. Jeffries. Williams of Texas.
Johnson.
Johnson. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries.
What?
Wilson of South Carolina. Johnson. Whitman.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Womack.
Johnson.
Johnson. Yackham.
Johnson.
Johnson. Zinke.
Michael Johnson.
Johnson.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from the Virgin Islands seek recognition?
Speaker, I have a parliamentary inquiry. I note that the names of the representatives from the Americas Samoa, Guam, Northern Mariana, Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, and the District of Columbia were not called, representing collectively 4 million Americans.
What kind of bullshit are they trying to pull here?
Mr. Speaker, collectively the largest per capita of veterans in this country.
Does the gentlelady have a parliamentary
I asked
inquiry?
why they were not called. Have some respect. It's not going to take...
Gentlelady is recognized.
I asked why they were not called from the parliamentarian, please.
Because they're not states.
Delegates-elect and the resident commissioner-elect are not qualified to vote. Representatives-elect are the only individuals qualified to vote in the election of a speaker. As provided in Section 36 of the House Rules and Manual, the speaker is elected by a majority of the members-elect voting by surname.
This body and this nation has a territories and a colonies problem. What was supposed to be temporary has now effectively become permanent. We must do something about this problem.
I'm totally fine with getting rid of the trash islands and leaving them on their own. No more tax dollars from us, though.
But I have a voice, and
The reading clerk will now call the names of the representatives-elect who did not answer the first call of the roll.
All right, let's see if what these people do.
Biggs of Arizona. Johnson. Carson. Jeffries. Cloud. Johnson. Clyde. Clyde.
Clyde.
Gosar.
These will just count as
Gosar.
abstains. Or present. Oh, not present, abstain.
Harris of Maryland. Johnson. Roy. Johnson.
Oh. Roy votes Johnson. Interesting.
Waltz. Johnson.
If there are any representatives-elect who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time.
Just stand right there.
Just say Clyde.
Just say Clyde.
Just.
Clyde. Clyde. Gosar. Johnson. Clyde. Johnson.
Fell short by 1 vote, Johnson. Baptist, he needs 218. It has to be more than half of them present. And he got exactly half. So, round 2 of voting will begin after some wheeling and dealing, some deliberations. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. 216. Wait, then who's not there? Because there's supposed to be, wait, supposed to be 535, right? Matt Gaetz resigned and hasn't been replaced yet, so that means there's 534. Or wait, why am I so confused? Because that's only two. Is it 430? Because Matt Gaetz hasn't been replaced. Yeah, 535 members of Congress. Okay, that's included. That's why I was confused. Yeah, it's 435 in the House. That 535 includes the 100 senators. That's where I'm messing up here. But out of the 435, Matt Gaetz resigned, so there's only 434 total. Yeah, okay, 434 voted. That's right. Okay, so I guess they changed it. It was 217 Johnson, 214 Jeffries, but I guess they screwed up somewhere. It's actually 216 Johnson, 215 Jeffries, 3 other. That equals 434, which is how many congressmen there are currently after Matt Gaetz resigned and has not been replaced. Grammy, I think they have to hold a whole nother vote. They can't just go change their vote. Oh, well, yeah. I think they want some promises from Johnson, and Johnson hasn't given anyone anything. He's just said, Trump wants me to be it, do it. One thing that will go away on this one, unless it's negotiated again, remember last time they did this, how many votes did it last? Like 8 different votes? I don't remember. I don't think it went that far. But they negotiated that one member could bring a resolution to have the speaker removed, which is what happened to, what's his face? McCarthy. And they ended up having him removed. But that would go away on this one unless it's renegotiated again. I don't know if that's even being discussed, but I thought that was interesting that would go away.
434. Matthew Green is a professor of politics at Catholic University. He is with us, and I'd love to show those 4 pages of math that you have been doing throughout this vote count. What happened?
Well, we knew that there were some Republicans who were unhappy with Johnson and talked about, if not voting against him, voting present or not voting. We knew Tom Massey of Kentucky definitely was not going to vote for Johnson. But we had more certainly than I had anticipated. And although many of them ultimately in the second round, when their names were called, decided to vote for Johnson, there were 3 Republicans who voted for other named candidates. And so as a result, Johnson did not have the 218 that he needed to get elected this round of speaker voting.
I forgot, that one went on for 4 days.
Of the Hill.
The McCarthy vote went on for 4 days. I forgot. That went on forever.
What's going on up there?
Yeah,
it was the 15th. They voted 15 times. This was back in 2023, 2 years ago. God, I forgot we streamed that for 4 days. Man. Hopefully we're not in for a 4-day stream here.
Voted for somebody other than Johnson on the floor, 3 Republicans. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan, Keith Self for Byron Donalds, and Thomas Massey for Tom Emmer. And because of that outcome, that leaves Johnson with just support from just 216 Republicans. All 215 Democrats supported Hakeem Jeffries. And that 216 number is problematic for Mike Johnson because it's short of the 218 that he needed to clinch the gavel. So this is not official yet. The clerk is going through it, but according to my tally, it looks like Johnson is going to fall short of the gavel on this first ballot.
And that's the same tally we have here on the set. Matthew Green, Catholic University politics professor, is with us as well. Could Ralph?
Kimba, I don't think anything happens if it goes past the 6. It's unrelated to.
Elect Self change his
vote. It's unrelated to the presidency, so.
I mean, theoretically, they can all change their vote.
This could last months.
If they want to, it's possible that the lawmakers who voted for Johnson could change their vote on the second ballot. Anything is possible here, but it's definitely going to require a whole host of conversations, perhaps some negotiations, to get Johnson the amount of support that he needs to clinch the gavel.
When do you expect that, if it takes place, a second round of voting?
Yeah, it's all a very tenuous situation right now, moving target, moving playing field. The first order of business will be the clerk officiating the results, and then we'll go from there to see if Mike Johnson decides to huddle with his conference, huddle with those lawmakers, or get back into another round of voting.
Michael Schnell, have you been able to be on the floor at all?
I was just in the House chamber, just ran down. I was up there for the vote, yes.
Have you had a chance to talk to some of the dissenting?
Well, that's actually a good question, Kimba. Congress has never attempted to certify a presidential election without a House Speaker in place. If the House elects Johnson, blah, blah, blah. Okay, wait. If the House elects Johnson or someone else as Speaker, things should proceed as normally, yes. Okay. The prospect is blah, blah, blah. Okay, come on, answer this question. Okay, temporary speakers can be appointed if there's something important to do. The clerk of the House will assemble the roster of House members based on election certificates. The clerk sets this up. Okay, so there would be some weird shit that would happen if he's not certified before the 6th.
The question is whether they would do that right away or if they want to hold out their votes for something they can get in exchange for those votes from the Speaker.
So he just left the floor. Speaker Johnson just left the floor. By the way, who is controlling the proceedings today? Because there is no Speaker-elect.
Right. So it's the clerk.
There is no Congress right now.
Well, the Congress has started, but the clerk.
I know, Kim, but me neither. You click on something that's supposed to have an answer, and they bury it in one sentence somewhere, and it's just unrelated to the entire article.
Because there are no members sworn in at this point.
Right. They're members-elect at this point. They haven't been sworn in. But more importantly, we don't have a Speaker. And so until that happens, the highest-ranking officer of the House, who is the clerk, is in charge.
Now, you were doing a lot of math. Do you mind holding up those sheets? I just want people to see what was going on during the vote count, because we had lots. Here, why don't you give them to me, and I'm going to just show these.
Okay, it's not that much math involved here.
Just to give you a sense of what kind of math was going on while this was happening. And you can see here all sorts of math as more members changed or didn't change or didn't vote, et cetera, et cetera. 6 people held out. Or 6 Republicans held out. Or 7, and all ended up voting for Mike Johnson.
No,
What's
not
the
true.
strategy there?
Right. So 7 just did not respond when their name was called. They chose not to vote. And there were, a couple possibilities here. One, as this was happening, was that they just didn't want to vote for Johnson, but didn't want to vote for anybody else. And they didn't care if that meant that Johnson would get to be Speaker or not. The other possibility was that they were doing it to make a point, to say that you need our votes to get elected Speaker. We will eventually vote for you, but by doing this, we're making you sweat a little bit and show that we matter and you need to listen to us as this 119th Congress proceeds. As it turned out, they all did end up voting for Johnson.
I guess all the people that just didn't vote.
Because you had
That's
these 3 who voted for other candidates and did not change
Massey,
their votes.
Norman, and Self.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Who was the third one?
And at this point, what do you expect to happen next?
Well, this is where the process of negotiation comes in, just as we saw 2 years ago when Kevin McCarthy was unable to get an absolute majority when he was running for Speaker in January of 2023. The question is whether those negotiations, as we heard earlier, those discussions are happening now, or whether or not, or if they're going to happen at a later point. And it kind of depends on the politics of the moment, what these members, what they want, why they voted the way they did, whether they're open
Keith Self
to,
was
to,
the third
to negotiation,
other
what it
vote.
is they want in exchange for those votes.
Matthew Green, often people are promised the first round. I will support you on the first round. Does that mean that some of the questionable votes, people who were maybe not in total support of Mike Johnson to be Speaker, could change their vote on the second round? And further muddle this process?
Keith Self, representing the 3rd District of Texas.
Johnson and his team hopefully were doing the things that a strong leader does when they have a good whip operation, which is they look and see what kind of commitment they're getting. And if it's someone saying, I will vote for you, period, that means something else than I'll vote for you the first time. And if there are folks who said, I'll vote for you the first time, they need to also be talking to them, as well as the folks, the 3 who wouldn't vote for Johnson in the first ballot.
It's ironic, maybe, that the 3 other votes, Tom Emmer, Jim Jordan, and Byron Donalds, all supported Speaker Johnson.
Mm-hmm. That's happened before. And it's also interesting.
Yeah,
that
they're
they
just
either
throwaway
are in leadership
votes.
Or in leadership
They just
positions,
voted for someone other than Johnson.
As well, as opposed to, outsider, first-time members kind of thing. But, whoever they choose in some ways is irrelevant, because the point is they didn't choose not to vote or vote present. They chose to vote for another candidate, which changed the math. And in this case, made it so Johnson, as of right now, does not have the votes to be Speaker.
When Pete Aguilar nominated Hakeem Jeffries, he said, from the party that governs.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of laughed. What was that?
Well, one way of thinking about the way that any legislative body works, including the House, is what is the majority? And you can look at the majority in terms of just party affiliation and say, in this case, well, Republicans have more seats, so they're the majority. But there's other kinds of majorities as well. So one kind of majority is a procedural majority, which is, do you have the ability to control the agenda, to decide what comes to the floor? Another is a policy agenda. Do you have a majority to pass the things that you want? And I think what he was referring to was what we saw quite a bit in the previous Congress, which is even though Republicans had a numerical majority, they had more Republicans than Democrats who were in the House, there weren't enough willing to vote with the party on some key issues involving the agenda or involving legislation. And they would often have to turn to Democrats to get the votes they needed. So I think what he's saying there is, look, you may have more people, there are more people on your side than our side, but you have more people willing to defect. And so you're going to have to come to us when it comes to things that really, really matter.
Okay, but then wouldn't that be Democrats also defecting to that side? Why is he just saying that one side is defection and the other side is...
The Republican whip. The whip has confirmed.
Why is he
that there
framing
will
them
be
differently?
Another vote. So, and Speaker Johnson has left the floor, and let's watch the floor for a few seconds and let's see what's going on.
That is true. Johnson ignored Trump and passed the third continuing resolution when Trump didn't want him to, and handed Ukraine at least another $2.5 billion. I don't love Johnson, but I don't really see any other path forward for now. I want them to negotiate the one-member removal again. We get Johnson in, and after his first screw-up, remove him. Named it. Republicans vote with Dems all the time. Unfortunately, they do. Democrats rarely vote with Republicans.
We are back live at the House of Representatives, first day of the 119th, the election of the Speaker. Round one voting is nearly complete, or we're waiting for it to be gavelled out. Tom Massey, Marjorie Taylor Greene, Professor Matthew Greene is here on the set with us. Professor Greene, what do you see in that picture?
That's a great shot of two members of the House Republican Conference who have a tradition of causing trouble and pushing back against party leaders from time to time. In this case, one of them did vote for Mike Johnson for Speaker, but the other did not.
And is Tom Massey, is there any lobbying that can be done, in your view, to Tom Massey to get him?
You know, this is something that's going on the floor, and I can't speak for Massey, but I will say he has a tradition of being a sort of a lone gun, if you will, and doing his own thing. And he has said early and often he would not vote for Johnson, which certainly suggests that he is not open to persuasion. But, you know, who knows?
The fact that this is happening after the last Speaker election, Kevin McCarthy, 15 rounds or so before he got elected.
15 rounds, 4 days.
I can't think of a time in the history of the House of
Whatever.
Representatives where we've had two consecutive Congresses where on the opening day or the first opportunity to vote for Speaker, no one wins the first ballot. I can't think of, it may be the first time in the history of the House that this has happened. And I think that speaks to the nature of congressional politics these days, that we have strong partisanship, right, which we always have for the Speaker races, but certainly people are not going to defect very often on big votes. But you also have division. You have division, especially within the Republican Party. And in fact, really since 2011, with one exception, we have had every vote for Speaker has had at least one defector from one or both of the parties. The only exception to that was the election for Johnson in the fall of 2023. So in some ways we're returning to form, but the fact that they couldn't even reach a majority, the majority party's candidate couldn't reach a majority on the first ballot on the first day of the opening house, and for two consecutive Congresses is really remarkable.
If you were a Democrat on the floor right now, how would you be feeling?
Well, Democrats would obviously prefer to be in the majority than the minority. But given that, I think they are thinking this is, again, just as Congressman Aguilar said, a sign that there's going to be a lot of opportunities for them to have influence because the majority party is going to have trouble governing.
Let's return to the House floor.
No recollection of that happening at all.
At all. This store sells some good liquor. And I drank a lot of it.
And you're watching live coverage of the opening day of the 119th Congress live on C-SPAN. And for the second Congress in a row, no speaker has been elected, at least on the first round. We're joined all afternoon by Matthew Green, who is a professor of politics at Catholic University, the author of the book, The Speaker of the House. Professor Green, 3 members did not vote for Speaker Johnson. He has 216 votes. There are 219 Republicans in the House. We talked about Tom Massey voting for Tom Emmer, Ralph Norman, Jim Jordan, Keith Self, Byron Donalds. This vote has not been called yet, though. Could they change their mind?
Right. Well, I mean, I suppose that could be part of the conversation that's happening in the cloakroom or somewhere in the Capitol, that maybe get them to change their votes. But it seems more likely to me that they would just have a second round of voting, and in some ways, it's not really much of a difference either way, right? Either they call this and say you didn't get chosen on the first ballot, but if they can persuade them to vote differently on the second ballot, he'll still be speaker, and eventually people may even forget about this. But right at this moment, though, there's certainly a lot of pressure, I am sure, on those three members to change their votes, because without a speaker, it's very difficult for the majority party to do much of anything.
And this first vote, has not been called yet, correct?
As far as I can see, that's right. It has not been called.
What does that mean? What's the significance of that?
It's hard to say. I don't really know what's happening at this point. Could just be that they're triple checking their numbers. It could be that there is some expectation that someone will change their vote. Two of these three will change their vote. I don't know, to be honest.
Well, it was 2 years ago that we went 15 rounds and a couple of days. Now, January 6th is the counting of the accreditation of the electoral votes in Congress. Is there any chance that that could push if there is no speaker elected?
Well, they have to do that. They have to do the count on that day. They're required to do so. That's
January 6th is the day that it has to happen.
Constitutionally to do it then. So on the one hand, that puts that really endangers. That puts a lot of pressure on the speaker elect, hopefully for Johnson to be speaker, because without him as speaker, it gets very difficult to do that. But it's not clear that we would not have a president if Johnson fails to become speaker by then. I honestly think that he will find the votes before then. But even if he doesn't, there are other ways possibly to go through the process of counting the electoral the electoral vote, the electoral ballots.
All right.
Ballots.
Tully McManus of Politico tweets out, reminder, if Republicans need to regroup before starting a new ballot, there is just one option on the table: adjourn the House. Without House rules in place, the chamber cannot recess, subject to the call of the chair. They'd need to adjourn with a certain day and time for reconvening. Do you agree with that procedure?
So let me get this straight. This is saying that
you can see it right over here on the screen. If Republicans need to regroup before starting a new ballot, there is just one option on the table: adjourn the House.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Well, I want to go back to
there
what
are no
happened.
Rules in place.
Right. I don't want to go back to what happened in 2023, which was the exact same situation, is that there were no rules in the House because the speaker had not yet been chosen. But regardless of whether you adjourn or go into recess, the point is there would be a break. You can take a break. It's a practical matter. That might be what the Republicans need, is just a break so they can start negotiating and try to get some of those Republicans to vote for Johnson.
All right. That's an update from the House floor. I want to remind you that if this drama is not enough for you and you want to watch the Senate being sworn in, that procedure is going on C-SPAN 2 in the Senate. There are 12 new senators who will be in the Senate, and a new Majority Leader, John Thune. But we're sticking with the House here on C-SPAN. We'll be back shortly. Live coverage of the opening of the 119th Congress. You saw Representative Johnson there, the Speaker nominee for the Republicans, talking with two members who voted for other people. Ralph Norman, South Carolina, Keith Self, Texas. They both voted for other members. They're gathered there in the corner. Matt Green, Catholic University professor, what does this mean?
These are the conversations that have to happen for Johnson to get the votes he needs.
He needs these 2 votes to win, doesn't he?
Right. Assuming he can't get Massey, he needs those 2.
He's not going to get Massey. I think we can probably call that off the table.
It seems extremely unlikely, yes.
There he goes with Keith Self and Ralph Norman, the 3 of them, right? There they go. Okay. That's Ralph Norman in the lead, who was not expected to not vote for Mike Johnson. And Keith Self was kind of a bit of a surprise too, wasn't he? He wasn't on our list of to watches.
Yeah, they're leaving the floor
with the speaker, right?
Yep.
There they go. All right. And again, to remind viewers, the gavel has not come down on the first vote. So it is still open. These 2 could change their mind, and he needs both of their votes. The vote count is currently 216 for Mike Johnson, 215 for Hakeem Jeffries, 3 for others. Tom Massey, Ralph Norman, Keith Self, all voted for another individual, and Mike Johnson needs 2 of 3 of those to be elected Speaker on the first vote. Am I correct in my math?
I believe that's correct. He needs 218.
And he's at 216.
Right. If those 3 who voted for someone else will vote for a named candidate in the next round, then it's still 218, so he'll need 2 of those 3.
And we just saw the 3 gentlemen, Ralph Norman, Keith Self, and Mike Johnson, walk off the floor.
Mm-hmm. So those conversations are happening. There's negotiations going on. Would love to be in that room.
Well, I'll tell you, the reason we have are able to get some of these shots that we're getting is because C-SPAN cameras are on the floor. The Speaker is allowed C-SPAN cameras to be at the opening of the Congress. Usually we do not control the cameras. They're controlled by the House of Representatives. But today we have that option. There's Tom Massey and Marjorie Taylor Greene chatting on the floor as well. Tom Massey, is there any chance that he would change his vote? I see he is not part of the group of 3 that went off the floor.
Well, I suppose that's pretty telling. He's not in the conversation. So it doesn't bode well for him changing his vote. Again, anything is possible, but it seems, again, based on what he said publicly for quite some time, he is a hard no on Speaker Johnson.
Thanks for sticking with us. We're going to be here and throughout this vote and potentially into the next one. And at the end of all this, we hope to hear from you and get your views on the opening day of the 119th Congress. Live coverage on C-SPAN.
Let me check that out, Neo Dark Knighter. I don't know how much we can trust the source, though. Not Diligent Dennison, he's fine, but according to... Let me mute this. According to George Santos, former Congressman Santos, opposition against Mike Johnson is actually growing. And this is actually just retweeted by Diligent Dennison from George. Do we trust George? George says, who knows? Maybe opposition is growing. Maybe we're in for a 3-day circus. Is anyone going to the Capitol on January 6th? Kimba, well, if George doesn't know, then no one knows. That's what I always say, too. Jay, you're going? You left your wallet in Pelosi's office? Big Siege will be in Charlottesville. Eric, is it still walled up and barricaded? You know, I don't know. Isn't Trump holding a rally on the 19th, the day before he's sworn in on the 20th? You guys think we should all go to that one? Representative Mike Flood of Nebraska says, I'm confident when you go to bed tonight, we will know who the next speaker is. And I'm confident that speaker will be Mike Johnson. Jarvis says fences are still up. They showed them for the drunk driver yesterday. Did we ever find out who the drunk driver was? Was it Pelosi? Big Siege, it was you. Hoosier, Nancy is not still in a German hospital. Nancy Pelosi is here in this room right now.
All right, you're watching live coverage of the opening day of the 119th Congress. Still on the first vote for Speaker. You can see the results there on the screen, or you could have. It was 216 for Mike Johnson, 215 for Representative Jeffries. 3 Republicans voted for somebody else. And as we await either for the gavel to come down and the second vote to start, or some members to change their minds, we want to take some phone calls and hear your voices on what you've seen so far.
Hey, someone should call in and honk.
202 is the area code for all of our numbers. 748-8000 for Democrats, 748-8001 for Republicans, 748-8002 for Independents. We'll begin taking those calls in just a minute. We also have on the set with us Matthew Green. He's a politics professor at Catholic University, the author of the book, the Speaker of the House. You've written a couple of other books as well, haven't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I wrote a book, Underdog Politics, about the minority party, and also a book about the House Freedom Caucus as well.
And what did you say in that book? What was your conclusion?
Well, there's a lot of things I say about them, but if I had to summarize it, I'd say that it explains why members would be willing to join forces and challenge their own party leaders. And it's a combination of factors. But the main thing is that even if they don't win votes, they gain other things, political wins or even sometimes policy wins by doing that.
All right, so we're at 216, 215. As the math is now, Mike Johnson needs 218 to be elected. Tom Massey voted for Tom Emmer. Ralph Norman voted for Jim Jordan. Keith Self voted for Byron Donalds. We just saw Mike Johnson and Ralph Norman and Keith Self walk off the floor of the House just a few minutes ago. We've been playing with the math here. All right. What's the latest scenario that you came up with?
He needs 2 votes.
That,
this isn't complicated math.
Than anyone else, which is what Johnson has. But you also need an absolute majority of all the votes cast for a named individual. So at this point, because everyone's voted for a named individual, Johnson needs 218 votes. But if those 3 Republicans, one of them decides, yes, I'll vote for Johnson, but the other 2 just can't bring themselves to do it, but one of those other 2 instead doesn't vote or votes present, then the denominator changes and Johnson needs 217 votes, not 218. And
so
in that
one
case,
votes for
Johnson.
Mike
one
Johnson.
More votes for Johnson, so
one
he goes
votes
to 17. 1 votes present.
Then Johnson
and
wins.
The other,
Congrats.
probably Tom Massey, votes for a 3rd candidate. Because that 3rd person didn't vote or voted present, now Johnson, by my math, needs 217, not 218.
Wow, did you have to send that calculation off to NASA to get it?
The camera's been following Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, around. He's the gentleman bent over having a conversation. So he is back on the floor. And there's Keith Self, the other of the 3, one of the 3 who voted for somebody else. Keith Self voted for his
Jarvis.
colleague,
I remember those
Donald,
soundboard prank calls
So there's Ralph
from the early 2000s, maybe even late
Johnson.
90s.
Can't tell you, heading to the floor, heading to the well. Okay, there's Mike Johnson.
All right, what are we doing?
Let's just go ahead and watch.
Changing a vote? We re-voting? Is Mike Johnson just giving it to Jeffries? Why are these 2 talking? I don't like it. What was that? It was a little fruity. Is a vote being changed? Are votes being changed?
we see Ralph Norman, Keith Self, who did not vote for Mike Johnson, 2 Republicans down in the well talking to the clerk. I'm not sure who was standing behind him, but Mike Johnson was down there with him just a minute ago.
Yeah, who is that
Johnson
behind
was
him?
Talking with Hakeem Jeffries.
Making sure they do what they said they would do.
Let's see what happens.
Looks like they're
This
changing
is
their
the
votes.
case, according to Matthew Green, Catholic University politics professor, where one could vote present, one could vote for Mike Johnson, and it would be over. Correct, Professor Green?
That's the math I've done. That's according to my math. We'll see.
And there's Mike Johnson there on the floor. So a little bit of politicking is going on here. I think he's trying to shut this down on one vote because the first vote still has not been called.
Correct. That's right. So perhaps they are there trying to change their vote.
And we left Ralph Norman and Keith Self down in the well. Don't know if they're still talking to the clerk or not. I presume they are. Did not see Tom Massey as part of this conversation. As he has said, he is a hard no. There's Ralph Norman again, South Carolina. Keith Self, the gentleman.
The House will be in order.
Mr. Norman is recorded as Jordan.
House will be in order.
Mr. Norman Johnson.
Oh, okay. Mr. Norman changed his vote to Johnson.
Mr. Self is recorded as Donalds. Mr. Self Johnson.
Okay. So Johnson wins? Yep. Okay, so that means the prediction. How do I just give back a prediction? I think I just delete it because there was no second vote. Yeah, delete and return points. It's a no bet since the second vote didn't happen. Yeah, I wonder what that backroom deal was.
Well, it looks like Mike Johnson has the votes to be Speaker, with Ralph Norman and Keith Self changing their votes.
Oh, Neo Dark Matter. Dang, yeah, you did.
Mike
No, wait.
Johnson. The total is now 218.
I thought you voted no. Didn't everyone vote no on the first poll? You should have won your votes on the first poll.
4 members present.
So actually, you should have lost them.
Representative Tim Burchett.
But you won them.
Joining us
Yeah?
on the phone. He is a Republican from Tennessee. Congressman Burchett, what just happened on the floor of the House of Representatives?
Well, you had 2 members. One had voted for Jim Jordan. I think the other one voted for Byron Donald.
I think the only
And they
people
just
that
split their vote.
voted in the first one voted that there wouldn't be a speaker. So I gave them the win on that.
Not called the votes.
When technically they lost, but I can't take it back. So you won some free points on that
We
one.
saw Mike Johnson, Keith Self, and Ralph Norman walk off the floor together in a trio. What was that conversation about? Do you know, Mr. Burchett?
I would say it was where they would be philosophically, and what they needed to get that vote.
Now, you were on the list of questionables for Mike Johnson. I hate to characterize you,
okay.
but
No.
Is that a fair characterization?
That's a very fair characterization. I prayed about it, and I figured out what I needed to do.
Why did you support Mike Johnson on the first ballot?
Because he's never lied to me, and I know where he's at philosophically. We just need to support him more in the conservative causes. And I think he's going to be a great speaker.
Tim Burchett, Republican of Tennessee, we appreciate your spending a minute with us. The House is back in session.
Of the state of Louisiana has received 218.
Yeah, I don't see any police chases happening. Let's see. There was one right before this. I can replay the foot pursuit. This was a couple hours ago.
You can tell dropping something, possibly a cell phone, it's hard to say. But police will have this suspect, at least the second. It looked to me like two were already in custody, and this is actually the third. This is an exercise in futility. A suspect's not going to get away. More patrol cars are responding every moment. Suspect's going to get tired, and you're going to see that may be an unmarked patrol car, or that's a good Samaritan trying to help out. Boy, the officer tripped over
that officer
curb,
just
but
take a
that's
tumble?
unfortunate, and it continues to try and go after the suspect. There are several other officers right behind him, and I don't know if you can get out the other end of that garage. If not, we have a standoff there.
Yeah, it looks like an officer ran in after the suspect, now two, and they're in that garage, and boy, who knows what's in that garage. So this could be a dangerous situation. Three officers
Certainly
inside
could.
now.
We don't know if there's a door to the back, but we haven't seen anybody run out of the back. So it
Run into a closed garage.
that I believe
We got a genius on our hands.
got out. And that's unusual. Go back into that vehicle right there. We saw that vehicle swerve in
Jarvis,
front of the
figure out
suspect to
marbles
stop the
for
suspect.
later.
It doesn't look like an off-duty officer to me.
Anything else happening anywhere? We could do a game stream tonight. Oh yeah, what about this storm rolling in a couple days? If you're in this area, you're quite literally about to be boned. It's not looking good for you. I hope you're lubed up and ready. If you're anywhere between Kansas or DC, yes, Big C's, the storm that's shaped like a Johnson. As if we haven't had enough Johnson for the day. Yeah. Oh, shit. Where's this person? Live storm chaser. Somewhere. Mexico, New York. That doesn't sound right.
Oh yeah, driving conditions. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, everybody that lives in like eastern Kansas, Missouri, be prepared for what could be a catastrophic ice storm. It is going to be downright scary, I'll tell you that much. But we'll be out there. We'll be doing what we can. We'll be doing our best to help.
Yeah, this literally says Mexico, New York at the bottom.
That's our end game goal at the end of the day, is to go out there to help others. And that's what we want to do, and that's what we'll continue to do. It's our favorite thing to do, honestly.
Eric, hurricane off the coast of Seattle. What? Is that for real?
Yeah, this band is heavily shifting south.
No.
Megan, I really hope you guys don't get the ice. I really hope you guys don't get it at your house.
Matt Gaetz this morning said Mike Johnson will be elected speaker today on the first vote. People might like or dislike that. I'm just reporting the news.
Kansas in the snow, yeah, it gets a little rough.
Massey said this didn't age well, then updated it with, actually it looks like mine didn't age well.
And it's clearing up so quickly. The roads are barely dry. Or they're
Fair
barely
enough.
Dry, barely wet.
Dear Stroman, Kansas isn't real. You're right. Uh-oh, did he get donged?
I'm staying south on 264. I'm taking that down to 90. What was that? I'm going south, straight south towards 90 from where I'm at. I almost like.
What's up with all the plane crashes lately?
But that doesn't take me to 90.
I'm going into Syracuse to intercept this cheesecake shop, and then I'm going to take 90.
Connor's got cheesecake, PDS cheesecake on his mind. Copy the PDS cheesecake.
What a horse laughing in Congress. God, look at the way she laughs.
I definitely would be all for some cheesecake too. I haven't tried it before, but if it's as good as the guy is saying, probably worth it. Probably worth it. But as you guys can see on the little radar map, the snow is really starting to dwindle.
Oh, speaker address.
But please be sure, guys. Please be sure.
Speaker address coming.
To hit that like and notify me button on the stream.
Then we will hear from Mike Johnson after he is sworn in as Speaker of the House by the clerk. Mike Johnson will make a speech. He will swear in all the members-elect. There is technically no member of Congress right now until the Speaker gets sworn in, and he can swear in all 434 other members. 219 Republicans, 215 Democrats. That's what's going to be happening this afternoon. The drama or the process of electing a speaker has concluded on one vote. It did take about 2 hours. We started this process at about 12:45 Eastern time, and it was 2:36 when they finally declared Mike Johnson to be the speaker, and that was on one vote. Matt Green is with Catholic University, a politics professor. Professor Green, what's your assessment of what's happened so far this afternoon?
Honorable member.
Certainly, it certainly hasn't been as wild and drawn out as the last effort to elect a speaker after a new Congress.
Fractal, good point. 119th Congress. Interesting number backwards.
But at the same time, what we're seeing is a consequence of a very, very narrow majority that Republicans have, and the difficulty that both parties, but especially House
Yeah, this
Republicans
doesn't bode
are
well for the
unified.
future of
When you
trying
have
to
a
get
very tiny
anything
majority
passed.
on a vote where you're not going to get any votes from the other party, you've got to have everybody voting together, and it only in this case takes a handful to say no, to prevent or at least delay the selection of a speaker from the majority party.
And if you are just joining us, the vote had stood at 216 to 215. 418 was needed. Three members voted for other people.
Needed.
Tom Massey, who promised that he was not going to vote for Mike Johnson all along, so he was already taken out of the equation, but he voted for the majority whip, Tom Emmer. Then Ralph Norman, Republican of South Carolina, voted for Republican Jim Jordan, and Keith Self voted for Republican Byron Donalds. Well, then we saw, because we have the C-SPAN cameras in there today, which is lovely, we got to see Speaker Johnson, Keith Self, and Ralph Norman huddle.
Former mayor of New York City, Rudy Giuliani, could be held in contempt of court after failing to comply with orders to surrender millions of dollars in assets to election workers he defamed.
Makes sense, which is that there was a conversation.
If he's held in contempt, he could face steep penalties, including jail time.
It could be anything from just a general promise to be a certain kind of speaker to something very specific. It can be bringing a bill to the floor. It could even be committee assignments. Who knows? I think we'll probably find out in the days ahead what that conversation was and what promises, if any, were made by Johnson.
But Ralph Norman and Keith Self had to walk down to the well, didn't they, to change their votes publicly?
Right, and that's a very important point, because we also had, I think, 7 Republicans choose not to vote
at all.
When their name first came up, which meant they would be called again.
Someone just pointed out that Hakeem Jeffries has now lost 20 consecutive votes for Speaker of the House.
Voted, well, 2 of the 3. Massey never changed his vote, but the other 2 voted for a named candidate. They needed to go to the well and ask the clerk to change their vote, which is in some ways just a routine process. But if you watching on C-SPAN, they had to walk down. The clerk had to say what their names were, how they originally voted, how they were going to change their vote. So it takes a bit more of an effort, and that's why Johnson had to go to the back room and have a conversation with them.
I remember, and maybe you are too young to remember this, but it was in '94, I believe it was. Bill Clinton was president. Marjorie Margolis Mizvinsky cast a vote on a budget tax bill, and she was basically sent down. The Democrats were in control. They left the floor open, and she had to walk down to change her vote, and did not win re-election after she changed her vote in support of this tax bill. So it's a very public way to cast a vote, isn't it?
It is a public way, yeah. So that was the
as if all the other votes weren't public.
She voted,
you called their name and they shouted out their vote
a long time
in public.
The Republicans basically chanted, bye-bye. You're leaving after the next election.
You do remember that.
Right. So these 2 Republicans who switched their vote, they may have made their party in the House happy, the conference happy, but if they have constituents who didn't want them to vote for Johnson, they're going to have to explain why they chose to go to the well and actually change their vote. And so that's why, I think you generally don't want to do that if you can avoid it, because it does put a great deal of attention, a spotlight on why you chose to change your vote.
And both Keith Self and Ralph Norman, as well as Tom Massey, at least historically, are from very, very safe districts.
Yes, but the politics that we have now, safe means safe from the other party, but not necessarily safe in a primary election. So that is where you still have to worry as an incumbent that you could lose re-election.
Who was the longest serving speaker? Do you know offhand?
The longest serving speaker was Sam Rayburn, who first became speaker in 1941 and then served off and on until his death in 1961.
Democrat, Texas.
Democrat from Texas.
What was his special power? What was his ability?
Was he a superhero?
Yeah, he had a lot of special powers, but he was a very good fit for the nature of the House and the Democratic caucus at the time. He was very good at negotiating. He was very good at sort of balancing the different wings of his party. He had a northern liberal wing and a southern conservative wing. Part of that was discussions and conversation. Part of it was making sure that the southern wing had sufficient influence in terms of sitting on committees and being chairs of committees. It also meant keeping certain things off the House
Later,
floor.
Hoosier. Enjoy the snow.
Civil rights. until not in his
Watch out
entire
for the big
speakership, but
pink
for much
dong
of his
coming on
speakership,
Sunday.
trying to avoid the kind of public fights that would divide the party and give the minority Republicans leverage.
There was a speaker in the 1920s who was married to Alice Roosevelt Long.
Mm-hmm.
Joseph Long. Mm-hmm. Buildings were named after him, right? Nicholas Longworth.
Nicholas Longworth,
right.
Yes.
Was he an impactful speaker?
He was. He didn't serve as long as folks like Rayburn, or I should mention also Pelosi, also served as speaker for quite a long time. But in terms of his ability to govern the House, he was fairly adept at it. He also, interestingly, was part of negotiations for a protracted battle for speaker in the 1920s. Not his race for speaker, but for, I believe it was Gillette was the Republican nominee, and there were a progressive bloc in the Republican conference who didn't want to vote for him. So he was part of the negotiations to try to get them successfully to vote for the Republican nominee.
Well, there are 3 House buildings on the other side of the Capitol. We've talked about Mr. Rayburn. He has a building named after him. Mr. Long.
Oh, they're actually doing a press briefing today? I'm surprised they're even still doing these.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Happy New Year. Okay, bear with me here. I have a couple things at the top. In the coming days, the President and First Lady will travel to New Orleans, Louisiana. The President and First Lady will grieve with the families and community members impacted by the tragic attack on January 1st and meet with local and state officials on the ground. The President has been extremely focused on ensuring that everything possible be done to complete this investigation, ensure the safety of the community, and provide any and all federal assistance to support state and local officials. Since Wednesday, the President has held regular meetings with his Homeland Security team to receive the latest information on the investigation and convey the need to do everything possible to
dressed
complete
as a rotten
this
banana.
Investigation and keep the American
Grab you, put your
people
shades
safe.
on.
The President has also spoken to the mayor of New Orleans and the governor of Louisiana to offer support to both state and local officials. His team remains
A
in
literal
close touch with their
Teletubby, right,
teams.
Corbusier?
And as the President said earlier today, you heard him moments ago, he has spoken with the families of the victims. As he made clear, there is no justification for violence of any kind, and we will not tolerate any attack on any of our nation's communities. The President continues to receive regular updates on both the investigation into the terrorist attack in New Orleans and the truck explosion in Las Vegas. Both cases remain active investigations, and I will refer you to the law enforcement to speak further about them.
I thought the
Next,
FBI
as you all
closed the
know,
case,
steel
and that's
and
why
steel
that
workers
journalist
who
was
produce it
allowed to
are the
walk through the
backbone
house
of our economy and
in
national
Houston.
security, powering our autos, our infrastructure, our defense. Without domestic steel production and domestic steel workers, our nation is less strong and less secure. CFIUS evaluation determined this acquisition would place one of America's largest steel producers under foreign control and create a risk for our national security and our critical supply chains. And CFIUS referred the matter to the President for his decision. So the President took action to block the deal to U.S. Steel U.S. Steel remains a proud American company, American-owned, American-operated by our American union steelworkers, and the best in the world. The domestic steel industry is the strongest it has been in years because
Democrats,
of the President's
the
actions
pro-America
to
party
level the
now,
playing
apparently.
field for American steel and American steel workers. And the United States remains an open economy with record foreign direct investments under President Biden's leadership. As foreign competitors like China distort global steel markets through unfair trade practices, such as dumping and overproduction, it is critical that we have a strong domestic steel industry that protects our national security and our supply chains. Today, the President demonstrated once again that he will always act to protect the security of this nation, as well as the resilience of our supply. And then, so with that, I'm going to, before I take questions, I wanted to add one more thing, which we haven't done in a while, which is talk about the week ahead, next week, and then we'll go into questions. In addition to his trip to New Orleans, the President and the First Lady will travel to Los Angeles, California on Monday.
Why?
The President will then travel to Eastern Coachella Valley, California on Tuesday. On Thursday, the President and the First Lady
Why?
will attend the state funeral for former President Jimmy Carter.
Okay.
As President Biden said, the world lost an extraordinary leader, statesman, and humanitarian. The President and the First Lady look forward to honoring a great American who gave his life to service. And finally, on Thursday afternoon, the President and the First Lady will travel to Rome, Italy from January 9th to the 12th. During the visit, the President will meet separately with His Holiness Pope Francis, President of Italy, and the Prime Minister of Italy as well.
Okay.
And as always, we'll have more to share as we get closer to the trips and events to come. But before I even go to your questions, I have one more thing that I wanted to add, a personal note. Jeremy and Jacob, thank you so much for your service. They will be leaving our team. This is going to be next week is going to be really your last week, but we didn't have another opportunity to do this in the briefing room. So I just wanted to say thank you to both. You have been phenomenal to work with. I'm going to miss you both and wish you the best in your upcoming endeavors in your career. But just wanted to thank them here at the podium. And if you guys have a chance, make sure to offer up your well wishes to Jeremy and Jacob next week. And with that, you have the first question. Fatima.
Thank you, Karine. I have three questions. Sure. Firstly, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen has for years talked about friendshoring and countering the ambitions of China with allies. Will the President's decision on Nippon undercut efforts to strengthen relationships with our allies, and could this decision potentially damage the U.S.'s relationship with Japan?
This is not about Japan. It's not. And you have watched this president really, in the last 4 years, strengthen his relationship with our allies, obviously abroad. And we have worked certainly together to strengthen our economic partnership with Japan. We have been in touch with Japan and conveyed our thoughts directly to them. This is about the need. You heard me talk about how now U.S. Steel is going to stay American-owned and American-operated. And this is what's important to this president, and that he's been very clear about that. So this is about continuing that, making sure that we are strong domestically, talent, operated steel industry for our national security and for a resilient supply chain, and how important that would be. So. And I also stated at the top how, if you look at the work that this president has done over the last 4 years, the steel industry is the strongest. It's the strongest that it's been in years because of the actions that this president has done every day since day one to make sure that we protect that. And so the president believes that we need major U.S. companies representing major share of U.S. steelmaking capacity, and to keep leading that fight on behalf of America's national interest. And so that's why the president made this decision. He's always been very clear about that. We've always been very consistent about that. And so that's going to be our focus, continuing to be our focus, obviously.
Earlier today, the president said he spoke with families of the victims of the New Orleans attack. What did he tell them?
Look, I'm not going to get into private conversation that the president has had with families. We don't do that. We'll certainly, if the families choose,
especially when he probably just mumbled and jumbled his way through.
Obviously, they have the right to do
whatever
that.
He was reading off a piece of paper
certainly
at them.
Go out to the families who lost their loved ones on a day that should have been a celebrated day to such an act of violence. Obviously, this is something that we will continue to condone, but as I stated at the top, the President and the First Lady are going to New Orleans in the upcoming days, and they're going to grieve with the family. And sadly, that is something that you have seen them do many times over the last 4 years. When an awful event happens, they are there. They want to be there, especially at this magnitude. They want to be there and be with the family and mourn with the family. And so again, this was certainly an awful event that happened on the day that we should have all been celebrating an incoming new year. And so our hearts go out to the families and also to the communities who are dealing with the aftermath of this tragedy.
And does the Vice President plan to oversee the certification of the election results on Monday?
I believe that is her plans. I would have to refer you to the Vice President's office on her schedule, but I believe so, yes.
Thanks, Karine. How does the attack in New Orleans and the explosion in Las Vegas increase concerns in the administration about security surrounding the certification of the vote, the Carter funeral next week here in Washington, the inauguration, and then even looking ahead to the Super Bowl next month in New Orleans?
So, look, all of the events that you just laid out is certainly a high priority for this administration. The Department of Homeland Security and federal law enforcement have well-established safety and security protocols in place, especially as we speak to the inauguration, obviously. And so they have been preparing for months to ensure that the security of these events and the safety of those attending them. So again, this is something that we've worked through for months now. And so we are working tirelessly every single day to ensure the safety and security of the inauguration, the safety and security of major events that you just laid out. It is important to the President that we continue to protect, as I said at the top, American communities across the country, and certainly that's what the President's going to wants his team to focus on, and that's what they have been focusing on.
Both suspects in New Orleans and Las Vegas served in the military. Does the President find that
Uncle Duck, I think they said
troubling,
condemning
and
the event,
is he
not
concerned about the
condoning,
problem
but
of radicalization in the military?
So look, I'm going to, obviously the FBI is continuing their investigation, so they can speak to the FBI and the Department of Defense, as you just stated, because of their status and affiliation to their military service. I would have to refer you to the Department of Defense to speak to that specifically. I don't want to get into a back and forth on this. What we can say is continue to condemn any form of violence and do whatever we can and continue to do the work, obviously, to make sure that there is a security protocol continues and we protect Americans and certainly communities across the country. I'm not going to
they wouldn't say that out loud.
The two subjects.
Can you say the President had any reaction when he heard that detail about both of these suspects?
What I can say is the President, his heart is going out to the family who were certainly affected and lost a loved one that day. And what he wants to do is to
Hakeem Jeffries
make sure
has been talking for a little while.
His team
Why
is
is he
continuing
talking?
to do the work to make sure that Americans are protected, communities are protected, and that's what I can speak to. You heard that from the President multiple times this week already, and that's going to be the President's focus.
Thanks, Karine. President-elect Trump, a little while ago today, seemed to take issue with the fact that American flags will be flown at half-mast at the time of his inauguration, considering the passing of former President Jimmy Carter. Is there any potential for that to not be the case? Is that a decision
say that one more
that
time?
the White House was...
Say that one more time.
The flags are due to be flown at half-mast at the time of the inauguration, and President Trump seems to be taking issue with
I haven't
that.
seen Trump take any issue with that.
Decision that the White
Have you
House
guys?
would consider reversing or reevaluating?
No.
On U.S. Steel, the U.S. relationship with Japan is strong. What is the national security concern the President sees by having this investment in an American company?
So look, you saw the President's statement. He talks about the CFIUS evaluation, how they determined that evaluation, how they got to their, again, determination that this acquisition would place one of America's largest steel producers under the foreign control and create risk.
Did
of
you
our
see that?
national
She just
security.
did
This
a
is from
double
CFIUS. They were
white
independent.
supremacy
The President
symbol
said
over
he was
here.
going to let the process
The lady
play out,
did,
and
yeah.
it has played out. And so if you think about our national security and our critical supply chain, CFIUS, referred the matter to the President to make that decision. And so the President took that very seriously. He's always going to make sure that we put Americans first, and that is how you saw this decision play out from this president. And I talked about China and how they tend to distort the global market deal through unfair trade practices. And so this is something that the president took very, very seriously, and took CFIUS determination. We got to remember this was a cross-government panel when you think about CFIUS and the decision that they made, and so that's how the president came to this decision. It is about making sure that a U.S. company is U.S. owned, U.S. operating, supporting, continuing to protect the U.S. steel makers, obviously a union, and that's what the president led with, and that's how he made this decision.
Is it political?
No, it's not. This is, again, as I was answering that question, we've always said,
Julie, I wonder where KJP
body.
will end up.
We let
MSNBC,
this process play
CNN.
out. We made sure that this process play out, and that's exactly what we did. And CFIUS made a determination, and they said this acquisition would create risk for our national security and our critical supply chain.
Johnson's about to speak. I do want to hear what he has to say.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Leader Jeffries, all of our treasured colleagues here in the House. I'm grateful for this nomination. I'm grateful for this election, for the confidence this chamber has placed in me. It is the great honor of my life to serve this body with all of you. Of course, these are difficult days in our home state of Louisiana, where I come from. We all know about the terrorist attack in New Orleans, and it's really shaken our state. People are reeling from that attack. It took the lives of 14 innocent people, and it injured dozens more. And I wanted to begin appropriately today. If we could, I'd ask you all to join me in a moment of silence for the victims of this horrific act. Thank you. Thank you for that. I believe in giving honor where honor is due, and all of us do well to honor our spouses. My wife happens to be here this time. She didn't make it last time. It happened a little sudden. Kelly, would you stand up here in the gallery? Thank you. And we have our 4 children here, Hannah, Abby, Jack, and Will. We all stand up just really quickly. Come on. I wanted to do that. All of us recognize that there are no perks to being a congressman's kid, right? It's all sacrifice. And our spouses put up with so much, endless hours in travel and all the responsibilities upon us. And we're good to remind them how important they are to us and how we could not do the job without them. And so it's appropriate for all of us to do that. Thank you. Thank you, guys. This is a momentous time in the nation of the history of our nation. It really is. And as members of the 119th Congress, we are stewards of the great American Revolution that began almost exactly now 250 years ago, 1775 and 1776. It will fall at the time of this Congress, the great anniversary. And in these 2.5 centuries, we've been reminded repeatedly that freedom is never free. And we have stood tall as the greatest nation on the face of the earth. It is without debate. We are the freest, the most powerful, most benevolent nation that has ever been in the history of the world. And it's not by happenstance. We're the ones who settled the West. We're the ones who ended slavery, who laid the transcontinental railroad, who gave women the right to vote, who won 2 world wars, who landed on the moon, and who won the Cold War.
Throughout our history, we have done what no one thought was possible. And still, at 250 years old, our nation is actually a young nation. This past fall, I had opportunity to go to the G7 speakers meeting. It was held in Italy. It's the only international trip I took as speaker over the last 14 months because I didn't have time to do it, but it was a quick 3-day jaunt, and met with my colleagues, the speakers of the other parliaments, the great governments around the world. And we talked about that, how really special America is, how unique we are in our place on the globe, and how important it is for us to maintain that. And as I talked to these colleagues from around the world, I thought, our closest allies, who recognize how important we are, how important this body, this House is. I thought about how is it that such a young country has become so exceptional, so singular in its importance, that today stands as the world's leader in liberty and the economy and culture. 100 years ago, President Calvin Coolidge answered that very question in his inaugural address. It was March of 100 years ago, exactly almost. He said this: "We best serve our own country and most successfully discharge our obligations to humanity by continuing to be openly and candidly, intensely and scrupulously American." I love that. I love that. Today, yeah, that's right. That's an applause line. Today, my friends, our nation is the envy of the world. Why? Because we have been marked by a spirit and a people who are explicitly that. We are explicitly American. We don't try to be like other nations, and we recognize that a strong America is good for the entire world. And everybody around the globe knows that. That's right. We also recognize that the core principles that made America what we are must still be preserved today. The principles, I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but it's really the 7 core principles of the nation itself. Individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. These are the ingredients, the things that made us who we are. And in America, we know that human flourishing is best achieved by adherence to time-tested truths. We could list a number of those simple truths. Here's a couple. It's better to give a hand up than a hand out. That innovation thrives when bureaucracy dies. The simple truth that it is parents and families and not administrators that must be in charge of their children's education. The path of prosperity has long been paved with policies that put America and Americans first. And that is what we will champion in the 119th Congress. We have a mandate, and that was shown in the election cycle. The people want an America First agenda. They do. Sadly, for the past 4 years of divided government, too many politicians in Washington have done the opposite. Open borders and overregulation have destroyed our cities and stifled innovation. Inflation and weak leadership have left Americans poorer, and they have placed our country in a perilous position. That's right. But in recent months, we've witnessed something happening, something that's really remarkable, a political moment in our modern history, a groundswell of Americans from every state, race, and religion who now demand that we put the interest of Americans first again, and we will, and we will. This is a powerful new coalition of our country. It's a coalition that insists that we purge the policies of America last and we bury them in the graveyard of history's mistakes, because it was a big mistake. To that end, this Congress will renounce the status quo and we will listen to the voices of the people. We will act quickly and we will start by defending our nation's borders. That's the #1 priority. Yes. In coordination with President Trump, this Congress will give our border and immigration enforcement agents the resources that they need to do their job. We will secure the border, we will deport dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens, and finally finish building the border wall. You said you'd work with us on that, Hakeem. I'm counting on it. After 4 years of high inflation, we have a big agenda. We have a lot to do, and we can do it in a bipartisan fashion. We can fight high inflation, and we must. We'll give relief to Americans, and we'll extend the Trump tax cuts. We're going to protect our industries from one-sided trade deals, and we're going to bring overseas investments back to America's shores. That's right. We'll defeat the harmful effects of inflation, and we'll make life affordable again for America's hardworking people. As leaders of a nation with vast natural resources that God has blessed us with, it is our duty to restore America's energy dominance, and that's what we'll do. We have to apply common sense. We have to stop the attacks on liquefied natural gas, pass legislation to eliminate the Green New Deal, that funding. We're going to expedite new drilling permits. We're going to save the jobs of our auto manufacturers, and we're going to do that by ending the ridiculous EV mandates. And as heirs to the American Revolution and the descendants of patriots who defied tyranny, in the coming months, we are going to pass legislation to roll back the totalitarian fourth branch of government known as the administrative state. We're going to drastically cut back the size and scope of government. We're going to return the power back to the people. And in coordination with President Trump and his administration, we are going to create a leaner, faster, and more efficient federal workforce. We need to do that. Our people do not deserve to be ruled by millions of bureaucrats they've never voted for, never met, and can never hold accountable. They deserve a government that is led by those they've elected to lead. That is how Article 1 is supposed to work. That was the idea of the Congress, and we will return to that principle. The American people have called on us to reject business as usual and throw out the status quo. We must and we will heed their call. This is especially important as it comes to our nation's military. For too long, the Washington establishment has sought to appease and accommodate our nation's adversaries. They've tried to replace our military warriors with social justice warriors. It does not work. And while we're still the most powerful fighting force in the history of the world, by God's grace, the same establishment has eroded the capacities of our Army and Navy and diminished the readiness of our Air Force. We have to put an end to this madness. My friends and my colleagues, I think we should all unite in this idea. It is time now to reinstate fear in our enemies, refocus our mission on lethality, and realign our commitment to peace through strength right now. We have to prioritize the things that matter most. We have to make adequate investments in defense. This is the most dangerous moment since World War II, and everyone around the world is looking to America and looking to this body to ensure that we maintain the peace. What we're proposing now is just simply, as President Trump likes to say, a return to common sense. And he's exactly right. That message resonated across the country. I am very thankful, personally, that this body is filled with men and women who are committed to that change, to return to common sense. We can do this together. We should. It is our responsibility to do so. When I first took this gavel, many of you heard me say that I don't believe in luck or consequence. I believe in the idea of providence. And this morning, I participated with many of you early this morning in the 119th Congress Interfaith Prayer Service. It was held at St. Peter's Catholic Church. Many of you were there. It was an ecumenical service and a bipartisan service, which was great. My good friend Hakeem Jeffries began by reading with the Old Testament. He read out of Deuteronomy 10. And then I was asked to provide a prayer for the nation. I offered one that is quite familiar to historians and probably many of us. It said right here in the program, it says right under my name, it is said each day of his 8 years of the presidency and every day thereafter until his death, President Thomas Jefferson recited this prayer. I wanted to share it with you here at the end of my remarks, not as a prayer per se right now, but as really as a reminder of what our third president and the primary author of the Declaration of Independence thought was so important that it should be a daily recitation. Let me just read you that prayer. It goes like this. Thomas Jefferson's Prayer for the Nation, it's entitled. Almighty God, who has given us this good land for our heritage, we humbly beseech thee that we may always prove ourselves a people mindful of thy favor and glad to do thy will. Bless our land with honorable ministry, sound learning, and pure manners. Save us from violence, discord, and confusion, from pride and arrogance, and from every evil way. Defend our liberties and fashion into one united people the multitude brought hither out of many kindreds and tongues. Endow with thy spirit of wisdom those whom in thy name we entrust the authority of government, that there may be justice and peace at home, and that through obedience to thy law, we may show forth thy praise among the nations of the earth. In time of prosperity, fill our hearts with thankfulness, and in the day of trouble, suffer not our trust in thee to fail, of which we ask through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. That was Thomas Jefferson's prayer. Yeah. Suffer not our trust in thee to fail. We will not fail. We cannot fail. We are all in this together. Our nation is counting on us to band together and solve these problems and get this done. I've said before that I believe God has elevated each one of you, that's just my belief, to your positions of leadership. And it's an act of providence that you've all been placed in your specific roles in this specific moment at this historic time, at the 250-year inflection point of the greatest nation in the history of the world. It is no small thing. We're also witnesses to the providence that spared our incoming president, President Trump, from the assassin's bullet, remarkable as that was, and to the new coalition of Americans that has risen from every creed, color, and cul-de-sac who want us to put America first. Our people are asking for a thriving economy and a rebuilt middle class and strong borders and a strong military, and we can deliver that. See, these objectives and these aims don't have an R or a D behind them. They have a USA. That's what we're about. In just a few moments, we're all going to take an oath. It is the same one oath for one nation and under the banner of one great American flag. This is an opportunity for us to protect our shared American heritage, to maintain the conditions needed for self-government, and to defend what Hakeem said earlier, the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Working together, we have the potential to be one of the most consequential Congresses in the history of this great nation, so long as we work together, we do the right thing, and we put America first. As we think about all we've accomplished in the past 250 years, we can only imagine what life will be like 250 years from now. Whatever the future may look like, if we do our jobs now, we can help ensure that our civic virtues will endure. that this nation will still be an example to all the world for its greatness and its example of self-government. And that in spite of our great challenges and even our disagreements and our healthy debates, this extraordinary institution, the People's House, will still be standing strong. Thank you all so much, and God bless America.
A lot of that sounded nice. We'll see.
So as the sequence of events requires, I am now ready to take the oath of office. I ask the Dean of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Harold Rogers of Kentucky, to administer the oath. Hold just a second, Dean. We don't have the microphone on yet.
Celebrate our shared American self-rule.
Jay,
When our
no,
founding
politician
fathers
would never lie to us.
rejected calls for an American king and chose a bold and innovative government of self-rule, it was met by opposition, understandably, by the world's kings. They said, you can't govern yourself. You need a king to direct the country. They said, it's only a dream, self-rule. The founding fathers said, you're right. It's the American dream. And thus, our founders said that we should move on our own with our own leadership. The Speaker of the House is the critical protector and promoter of self-rule, the keeper of the dream, if you will. And we've elected this man from Louisiana to carry on our bold experiment in democracy and self-rule. So, sir, if you're ready to assume this awesome responsibility, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely, that you take this obligation without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter, so help you God.
I do.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
We did it, Hongers. We have a Speaker of the House.
You may as well remain standing, because according to precedent, the chair will swear in the members-elect en masse. The members-elect will all rise, and the chair will now administer the oath of office. Will you raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you're about to enter, so help you God. Thank you. Congratulations, you are now members of the 119th.
Hey, one of them didn't say I do. I saw that guy, he had his fingers crossed behind his back. Chuck, AOC raised her left hand. Well, we got through this with only a little bit of drama. Not too bad. We'll see if J6 comes and goes with any amount of drama. That's Monday. In 3 days. I guess I'll be streaming on Monday. I don't know. See if there's any action. This is going to conclude this stream, though. Thank you all for hanging with me today. We have a Speaker of the House. We'll see where it gets us. I don't like that we lost the only one person needs to bring it to the floor to have him removed. I liked that, but we'll see. Have a good rest of your afternoon, everybody. The Republic still stands for now. Till next time. Hang on.